Welcome to the Secret Art of Business, and I am very happy to have Nicole Provillon. Is that how you say your last name?
That's fine. It's another one of those. It's Provillon, but
See,
yes. So you can just say however you feel to say it. It's
I'm gonna say Nicole because we just had a conversation about your business, which is Kurly Kürtősh, which is the English pronunciation. Many people just say Curly. Because they get intimidated by its formal, but please say it again. How do you say your company name?
so it's Kurly Kürtősh.
Oh, I love it.
We have to roll the R's, and we don't phonetically do that in the U.S., so it just becomes a challenge.
I love it. I love it. So Nicole, you have a fantastic story. And it is perfect for this podcast because it is such a journey. It is kind of going with your passion, falling into things, and things just kind of magically happen and going in your path. So if you could, please tell me how you started this amazing bakery.
Yes. So the name of the business is Kurly Kürtősh. It's named after Hungarian chimney cakes, which is a very popular street food in Central Europe. If you go there, you see them making it on the streets over charcoal. And that is actually called kürtőskalács, which completely, if you see the spelling, is very scary and intimidating. And so I lived in Hungary for 4 years. I've actually traveled to over 30 countries for my job. I lived in Spain. I'm from the New York City area, and I actually never saw this pastry before in my life until I went to Hungary. And when I went there, not only was it ubiquitous and you could find it at all the different street festivals, they actually had a festival completely dedicated to this pastry.
Oh, wow.
And there's always lines, and I'm like, there is a whole phenomenon, a thing, and we have no clue that it exists, and it's actually amazing. So I kind of, I was actually extremely sick as well. I was on 4 hypertension medicines at the age of 27, and I can't eat a lot of sweets because a lot of the sweets in the US tend to be overly sweetened, highly processed. So when I was in Hungary, I could eat this with no problem and really fell in love with it. So over the period of time I was there, I began to realize I'm leaving. And I was like, what am I going to do when I leave? My background is accounting. I'm a CPA. I went to business school. Then I started doing marketing for Lysol and Airwick and did a lot of these large global brands. And then my family had moved to Hungary. And that's kind of how we got there. I wasn't working. I personally love to work. I just tell people I don't like to be a slave, which is sometimes hard between, the two in a company. And so I wanted to work in Hungary, couldn't. And when I was there, I saw that this pastry is actually a thing, and I'm leaving the country. Where am I going to find it in the United States? So I started Googling for it. And the only place I could find was someplace in Queens. And I was just like, well, I'm not going to go to Queens. And I had this idea of why don't I bring it back to the United States? I did the research to understand, well, why isn't it here? Right? Why hasn't someone already conquered it and brought it, throughout the United States? And it's because it's actually very labor intensive. They're doing it in front of you by hand, individually, baking them, and then they're customizing them. And so I said, okay, if I'm going to bring this back, how do we make this into a viable business? And that's where the whole idea of making it an experience came to life. So we're an experiential boutique bakery cafe. And so the whole idea is when you come in, we're not just serving you a product, we're actually bringing you in to an authentic experience from Hungary. So in Hungary, they're making them on the streets over charcoal. And it's really a street food. In the US, I had to really kind of elevate that experience. And so we're not making it over charcoal, we're making it over an oven here, but we're customizing it with a variety of toppings. We're working with the purest, or I should say gourmet spice purveyors. So you're gonna get the purest ingredients. Our flour is coming from Europe. We use a French style butter. We use Ceylon cinnamon, which is sourced from Sri Lanka. We use a French Varona cocoa, like everything we use, we like to say your body recognizes. And that's kind of the whole essence. It's the quality of the food. It's really getting this authentic experience. And then I brought that back to the United States in a more, I brought the street food to the United States in an elevated way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the first was trying to do a proof of concept, really trying to make sure that this idea could stand at a higher price point and people saw value. Continued to really grow the business. We started working with different corporate accounts. And then we created the idea Dessertainment, where we actually go on site and we prepare it for you. So it's half dessert, half entertainment. Because most people are fascinated because they're just like, what is this? I've never seen this before. And we're literally like a French bakery popping up in a space, making them in front of you, customizing them. And then when you actually eat it, it's amazing. Most of the food that you eat, they look pretty. They have nice dips and sauces and all this other type of stuff. And then you eat it and you're like, But from the time you actually see it, from the time you smell it, from the time you taste it, and then just the whole vibe, everyone's excited. They're like, what is this? What are you going to get? And it actually creates a lot of talk triggers because everyone's like, oh my God, I remember this from when I went to Hungary. Or someone's like, I grew up eating these. And everyone starts sharing their stories. And so from that, it just creates an overall vibe. But you were going to say something.
Well, besides the fact that I'm really hungry right now, I want to try this. No, I love that it is elevated to, it's now an experience. And I saw your webpage and I have never seen anything like this. So that's what makes this even more exciting, especially if you're there to witness you making it as well. And then you get to customize it and things like that. And I have to ask, I guess, in my next question, what kind of led up to you just creating a business that essentially makes something? Because you were in accounting, you were a CPA, and this is just a hard switch. Was it just, you know what, I'm kind of done with numbers and I want to do this other craft thing? Or do you feel like you've always wanted to have something like this?
So it's a couple of things. For one, I was just very good at numbers. My mother was a math teacher. My sister's also a math teacher. So numbers is kind of just what we're really good at.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went down the path of doing something in that field, and accounting worked really well. Your mom tells you, this is what you should do. This is how you're going to get a job.
This is what we do.
But from day one, I just remember from day one, I was like, I'm not staying here. I can't do this. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm 21, good at, I'm skilled at math. I'm making good money. I did internships from the time I left high school. It's just that's just what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But I always loved to bake. But I never really thought, I never was going to open up a bakery. That just wasn't of interest to me. And so over time, I just kind of realized I'm not going to do this accounting thing. And then I just had this opportunity to go to Hungary. I mean, my husband always says to me, you had this opportunity that people don't have, and then you discovered this amazing food.
Yeah.
And you were able to create it into an experience. And for me, the bigger purpose of Kurly Kürtősh was a tagline is called Uncurl Your Sweet Spot. And so my mom, I grew up in a very, my mom's from the Caribbean, a small island. So we're all very close knit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about family. It's all about having a good time. And I feel and know that chimney cakes creates joy in people. My husband would tell me no, or he used to tell me no. And one day we did an event and I was like, guys, I'm going to do chimney cakes. Does anybody care? And they were like, yes, chimney cakes. It's amazing. It just brings this sense of joy.
Yeah.
So I said, how can we actually make this into a real viable business concept? And that's where we kind of infused really 3 pillars. Because chimney cakes bring joy and Kurly Kürtősh is about bringing joy and happiness. The first thing is people love this sense of discovery. Whenever people are discovering something, it's just super cool. And they like to be in the know when other people don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Come in here, they're like, other people don't know. They're like, this is so cool. So, and they're learning. We talk about the different country. We talk about Hungary. We talk about the sourcing of the different countries of our ingredients. So, that's going to always be a hit with people. Two, people love good food. I've never seen anybody eating good food and they're just like miserable. It kind of just takes you off into a different space. And the third thing is, Kurly Kürtősh is always when there's friends, there's family. It's a fun event. Even if you're at work, it's everybody socializing and hanging out. And so you're with your friends and family. So if you take this sense of discovery, you take this sense of good food, the idea of good food, and then you take hang out with friends and family, it's the ultimate sweet spot.
Absolutely.
And so that's why we call Uncurl your sweet spot, because that is the joy. And originally I used to say, I think most people are miserable, so I want to give them something to be excited about. But then I began to realize most people actually are not miserable. They're hurting. They're hurting from some sort of trauma, whether it's from childhood, whether it's from society. It's some experience, either short or long term, has created this sense of hurt that comes out in a negative way. And I, realized unfortunately, with naivety, I realized I cannot solve people's problems, but I could at least create a space where they can explore. So when people come in here, into the shop, they end up meeting maybe a Hungarian who like grew up on this, who's so proud of their food. And they're like, this is amazing. I didn't know this exists. Or they come in with like a really bad mood. I mean, I've had people been like, you know what? I was in such a bad mood, and coming here has just made me so happy. We have fun colors. The staff is friendly. We're talking about, the different ingredients, the process. We're giving sampling. So everyone is just so joyous. And that's the big kind of idea about creating this vibe and an energy in a happy space. We like to promote happiness.
Yeah, you are addressing something really, really powerful in that when people are suffering and hurting, and quite frankly, a lot of people are just plain tired, what they need to do is kind of escape from that path, that repetition, that lifestyle, and just switch it up and do something fun. Try something completely new that you've never tried before. Go to a place that is filled with joy. Hang out with friends and laugh. And I mean, sometimes, it could be as simple as you just go to, put on a comedy on Netflix or something, and your mood will change. But what you're doing is exactly that. You're basically changing people's mindset in a way and delivering them a little bit out of this exhaustion, this sadness, this hurt. And I am very pro food when it comes to that too, because when you think about celebrating with people and food is involved, you really can't get a better celebration in that regard. But I do need to ask you now, what did you do? Oh, go ahead.
I'll tell you, one of the big challenges that we have that I'm kind of, trying to figure out where I stand on this is we are a European style cafe. People come in and they literally feel like I'm back in Europe. We don't have like, the digital screens. It's very kind of quaint and simple, but we actually make things to order. And so you don't come in, it's not fast grab and you're running.
Right.
Sometimes, I had a friend here, he's like, you got to serve people faster. I mean, there's people just sitting here and they're waiting. And I'm like, but that's kind of what we need to do sometimes.
Right.
Like you really need to sit down and actually enjoy the company that you have and chat with them and then get your order. It's not like it's like an hour wait, but good food takes time.
Absolutely.
Right? So, it's kind of like, do we, really try to push and churn stuff out? Or do we really try to get people to embrace the idea that everything shouldn't be done in a hot second?
Right. And just really enjoy the pausing, the breathing, the relaxing, look around the room, see who's all there, take it all in. We shortchange ourselves on a lot of that.
I mean, one guy left us a review and he's like, it's amazing, but be ready to wait 5-10 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. He still gave us a good review, but it's just like, wow, like waiting 5-10 minutes is a long time. But you have to be careful trying to change the culture, because to some extent people want things fast, but that's why we have things where people can order ahead of time, and so then they could actually be able to just pick it up. But the real idea is to kind of just enjoy the present, take a time let this be the place when you walk in, you slow down, and then when you go out, you're back on that fast pace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So my next question was, when you were a kid, what did you do that was fun or creative or basically kind of fell in line with what you're doing with now, or maybe it was completely unrelated. What did you do that was fun?
So I used to always love to cook and bake, or maybe even like, I guess, bake and cook together. Because my grandmother would always bake. I would bake for my boyfriend, and I'd be like, "Oh, you want some lasagna? I'll make it for you. You want a cake? I'll make it for you." I just liked like the cooking, making the the with the what are those things called, with the marshmallows and the cereal. I completely
Oh,
lost it.
like
Of
Rice Krispie treats
Yeah,
or
Rice Krispie treats. Yes, I used to love making like the Rice Krispie treats, or making my little like homemade pizza with the English muffins,
yeah,
and so that
yeah.
was always a thing for me. My mom is from the Caribbean, so we would go to the Caribbean every other summer for 2 months. So I was always intrigued by like the different culture and the different people and how people live their life, which is why I did internal audit for 2 years, where we would travel 2 to 3 weeks at a time. So I've been to over 30 countries. And and so as a child, I was always curious. I was always like, what are they doing? But why? Like, I like to go to other people's houses and see how they live. And and I think that really carries out now, because the people who walk in our doors come from all walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
We get Middle Eastern people, we get African people, we get Latino people, we get Europeans, obviously
Yeah,
Hungarians.
yeah,
And
yeah.
because I've had such an extensive time traveling and living in Hungary, and my kids went to a British school instead of an American school,
Mm-hmm.
where we became great friends with a Turkish woman. And then we went there and we were doing sail. We went to the sailing camp with her kids. I've always been so curious about how other people live, that I tell people Kurly Kürtősh is a fusion of all these other different ideas, because I'm so open that people will come and they'll just share their ideas, right? Not all ideas are good ones, but but I'll listen to anybody as long as you come with a good intent and some credibility. And so you get all these different ideas from people who are willing to share with you, and you're able to be like, "Ooh, that would be good to add to this, and that would be good to add to that," and then it just blossoms. So I think the idea of this whole like being curious, hanging out with old people, like my best friend's mom is like my best friend, and she's like African, and she's like 75, and I will hang out with her alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and my girlfriend is Romanian, and she would always, when I would go on my trips overseas, she would sometimes be in different locations, and I would pop and spend time with her. So I think just learning from all these different cultures, always being curious, always talking to different people, uh, and then loving this whole idea of cooking, has infused itself into one thing in my shop. I call this shop the happy place. What more can you
Mm-hmm.
get? Different people, different cultures, different foods. Some people will even bring me food, and I'd be like, "Hey, I made this. You want some?"
Oh, wow.
And so it's just, and then showing people how we are all ultimately at the core, we're all the same.
Yeah. It sounds like an amazing community environment, but that is something that you've always done and you've always had this passion for. And then you get to lump in the love of cooking as well, which is so awesome. And I'm
I
going to
mean,
guess you do not ship these yet, do you? You have to go into the store to get them. Am I correct?
yes. And
Yeah.
so it's so funny, because now at the shop, because we also make a Hungarian inspired lemonade. So we have this water machine that's from Italy, and we use sparkling water because that's what they use in Hungary. We use fruit syrups that come from a farm, and we use freshly squeezed lemon juice. So my Swedish friend came and she was like, "You need to sample this drink." And I was like, "Huh?" She was like, "No, no, no, no. We call it Sparkleade. We created that
Mhm.
our own name because it's sparkling water and a lemonade
I
fused
love it.
together. And so we've called it Sparkleade." And she's like, "That name and that description means nothing. It's when they taste it." She was like, "Every person who walks in here must sample this drink." So we started sampling it, and it's like 8 out of 10 people buy it. And if they don't buy it, they sit down and they come back and they're like, "So what was that drink that you gave us?"
'Cause
Um,
I want
and
that again.
Right. And so like everything we've built a sense of credibility that anything, our coffee is locally roasted. We don't do a lot of options because it becomes a very complex system. And my belief is if you have something that's amazing, you don't need to have 4 or 5 options, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we make one pastry. We have, you can make it over 20 different combinations. I mean, then if you add we have dips, we have spreads, we have ice cream. I mean, you could leave here with almost like 50 different combinations the
Wow.
way we make it. But we keep it very simple.
Cool. I will have all your information in the notes of this podcast. So people can look you up and plan a trip, because I think it would be definitely worth their while to stop in and try this as well.
Yes, we're a destination location.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I have to ask too is, what do you do now when you're not working, when you're not in the shop? And I know it's a hard question for people like ourselves that it's so fun to do this kind of work. But when you're not in the shop, what are you doing that you do to unwind, that's relaxing, creative, fun?
Well, so I have 2 children, 15, 13, and I think the hardest thing is being able to juggle being a mom, being a business owner, and actually essentially creating a category. We are creating
Amen.
something that does not exist. Um, we don't necessarily get the support from our story is not amplified by the media outlets. So we essentially have to do that ourselves, which is extremely
Mm-hmm.
hard trying to raise 2 children. So I would say, which I kind of find fun, is lately, with particularly in the last year as my daughter's entering high school, or in high school, and I'm trying to juggle her emotions as she kind of
Yes.
navigates this society. I've been dealing with a lot of like self development, and the things that what I've learned is the things that make you great at work or at a business doesn't necessarily make you great as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
So um it's kind of learning how to balance that, and figuring out how do I become my best person in both spaces, which for me is super fun because you read a lot of these books or these ideas and they kind of go against your natural tendency of being a parent. But when you actually execute them and you see how almost simple life is, it's really not that complicated. Um, it's just for me super fun because the relationship with my daughter is like a relationship with a teen daughter, and with me trying to juggle this business. But as I begin to really take a step back and look at kind of the basic foundations of treating her as a person and maybe not an employee, right? You're spending all this
Right.
time and you're
Right.
home and you're like, all right, this is, it begins to show you how much how much potential there is to
Yes.
become a better person, and then also connect with more people. Every time I go through these different circumstances, it allows me to better connect with the people who come through my doors, to even help them navigate the challenges and make them believe. So it's almost after this I think I might even go into like speaking. People always tell me I should be a motivational speaker, and so it's kind of like, if I am going to do that, how do I become a better person at it,
Mm-hmm.
and how do I
Mm-hmm.
begin to just motivate my own children before I
Right.
worry about
Right.
society. So and so I think what I do for fun is really just trying to continue to build who I am as an
Mm-hmm.
individual, to not just Curly because the people here love me, but really trying to be the best person for my children.
Yeah, so just kind of expanding on what you've created and bringing it home and things like that. I mean, I really love that. And I do think that we can tap into a lot of that unplugging and ideation with our children too, because they are coming in with such a different perspective, sometimes better than our own, because, we get a little jaded as we get older.
Yes.
And simplify, a lot of stuff gets a little more simplified and it gets more precious, and we think about things differently rather than on this big conquering the world sort of scale. It's just like, no, the universe can be sometimes just right here in these four walls, and it's a great perspective to visit, I think, in order to then go back and try and take over the world. So I love that you brought up children. I think that's definitely a great resource for not working and finding great cause within that as well.
Yeah, I try to, I don't have a lot of time. I mean, I tell people, I
Oh
tell
yeah.
people this. I think the Small Business Bureau may not like me because at the end of all this, it's very hard to start a small business. I actually think
Absolutely.
to build a business that you can live off of, right? Not
Yes.
even just build a small business, but one you can live off is so hard, and it's pushed and promoted so much in this country as if it's like one, two, three. You
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice a lot, you have so many challenges you don't anticipate. It's just a very, and I just encourage people, if you're going to do it, find something that you definitely love. Find something that you know you can kind of balance if you have a family,
Mm-hmm.
or how you can kind of juggle the two, because it is beyond the hardest thing I could imagine. But I'm also creating a category that does not exist. So I'm
Yeah.
doing a lot of educating, which is
Yes. Yes. And people, you introduce yourselves, at least this happens to me, introduce yourself sometimes to people and you say, well, I'm a business owner. Then they're all automatically like, oh, well, you're set then. You don't, you have all the time in the world and all the money. And I'm like, no, no, it's not the same. I didn't say I was a CEO of a major corporation. I said I was a business owner. And you're right. That definition does change and your time is a little bit different. But again, and just kind of reiterate what you said, if it's something that you love, it doesn't seem like work. You are just fulfilling your destiny or your legacy for yourself or for your children. And then with that, you can give more in other areas. And I think that's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
And I think people have to remember it's not easy. So you have to keep going.
Oh yeah.
You not like, if you listen to all the stories, and a lot of times people come in and they're like, they think the shop should be jam packed all the time. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, that's not how you create anything great. I mean,
Right.
if you listen to Taylor Swift's story, I mean, I even had one lady who was like, oh, Taylor Swift. And I was like, no, no, no.
No.
Have you listened to her story? Like, she did not grow up overnight and just
Nope.
become like this. She went through some tough times. She went through ups and downs, but she stayed the course. And that
Yep.
is why she is where she is today. So I think you really need to listen to all these people who are doing something that's revolutionary, that's completely against the grain.
Mm-hmm.
You need to listen to their story. And
Absolutely.
that's what keeps me believing in my times of like challenges, is that that in order to create something great and different, you need to go down to really rise to the top. And it gives you a completely humbled perspective.
There's a lot of perspective in the statement that something like, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And it's absolutely true. And when I talk to people who are starting businesses, based on my own journey too, it's like, one of the things to remember is that you have to be relentless. You just have to see the destination and just keep walking towards it every day, and don't get distracted by the no's or the failures, or when you trip, or somebody, or in your case, I guess a customer might complain about something. I don't know what they would possibly complain about because it sounds amazing, or their 10-minute wait. They complain about their 10-minute wait. You just have to kind of just brush it off and say that's okay, because I know where I'm headed and I'm just going to be relentless with it. And not everybody can do that, and that's fine. We all have a different journey to take, and I feel you're on the right one. And like I said, I need to plan a trip to New Jersey so I can try this out.
Because you live in Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So thank you.
Everyone makes it to New York at some point. The way
Absolutely. Yeah, but
but the problem is, like, we're kind of outside of New York and there's so much to do in New York. But eventually, one day, we will be noted as a place, because what I realized, people need social proof. Like, they have to be told, you need to make this a stop on your destination. So one day, Kurly Kürtősh will be a spot where people will put it on their bucket list to make
yes.
sure we
Yes.
must stop there and
And
try it.
I think you're absolutely right with that being kind of your goal in this, because there are places like that. I've traveled to a lot of places, outside of the country, and I'm like, this is going to be a 20-minute subway ride or train ride, but you know what? We're going to go there and we're going to have this food. And I get super specific because sometimes there's no other place in the world you can get it, or that's what
Right.
that area is known for. And there's are very few places that do what you do. So yeah, plan a trip, have a nice meal somewhere in the neighborhood and then stop by there, or honestly just go to your place and fill up because
Right.
it
And it
sounds,
takes, but it also takes time to build a destination type
oh
place.
yeah.
Like, those don't grow overnight. And I think that's what people don't. I mean, I have a guy who will come in here and be like, I don't think this idea is going to work. He's just like, I just don't
Oh,
think you should, and he's like, but I do think you should come work with me. And I'm like,
thank you, but no.
yes.
Um, but as
But
you
it's
know, and what's great too is like with social media and things like that, you can start creating a viral sort of
right.
movement, and people will find you, and hopefully they will find you on this podcast as well. And I definitely appreciate your time. Like I said, you have an amazing story, and we didn't even touch upon the touch and go stuff that you had to do through the pandemic and things like that. But I think in many cases, everybody's story is the same. It's like, are we going to make it? But here we are, and here you are. And again, I thank you so much for your time today. You have a fantastic story again, and I wish you the best.
Thank
And I
you.
will have all your information so people can look at it, drool over it, and hopefully make it out to your shop. So thanks
Yes.
again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Catherine.